Welcome to another session of Stelmo's Rants and Raves. I'm Stelmo, so let's just jump right in here. So, let me start off with this. I'm a little disappointed again with the president when I read that he's now endorsed Lindsey Graham's sister in her quest for a full 6-year term. Now, once again, we were gaslit from the beginning. After the untimely death of Senator Graham, we were told that they were looking for a replacement, an interim person, someone that wouldn't be going to run for a full term to take his place because it was such a short time between his death and the election. So anyway, that's what we were told. They were looking for someone to fill it in. And so I thought that it made a lot of sense to allow Lindsey Graham's sister to have that position temporarily. And that way it would make it more or less a wide open field for the primary. I can only guess that they didn't lock her down or didn't have her sign an agreement because she announced she's running. And the problem I have with her is, she admitted up front that she's not another Lindsey, but rather she's really not interested, as Lindsey was, with international dealings that we have with other foreign countries and such. And he was especially, how shall we say, he was a warmonger, okay? Lindsey Graham never saw a war he didn't want to fight. And I believe that's because he got enough campaign contributions from the companies that put him there. Now, based on what his sister said, you have to wonder, are those same companies going to be spending their contributions on her, or are they going to put them elsewhere? I don't have, I don't know the answer to that. But anyway, Senator Graham's sister said she's going to be a social warrior. And when I look at the politics of Lindsey Graham, and okay, it was probably, certainly I'm going to guess it was decades ago that the late, great Rush Limbaugh coined the name Lindsey Grahamnesty. And the reason Rush gave him that name is because Lindsey Graham wanted to give amnesty to all the illegals that were here. Now, of course, that didn't happen, and Senator Graham, I believe, realized he was on the losing end of that battle. But now we're going to put his sister in there, and it sounds to me like she's a little too liberal. We don't need another Susan Collins or Lisa Murkowski. We don't need those rhinos in the Senate. So I'm disappointed that the president has endorsed her. I get the optics and everything of it. But the bottom line is this. I'm not even, we're going to have to wait and see what happens in the primary, because I'm going to suggest that, and I don't know even all the individuals who are running, but I understand there's a large number of them, people who have patiently waited in the wings, waiting for what they perceive to be their opening. And so naturally, they are all going to want to be partaking in this. And I just hope I hope I'm maybe making a mountain out of a molehill. I don't know. But I remember when I read her comments after being appointed to, and this was before she announced her intention to seek the seat. When I read it, I said, oh boy, she's a liberal. And we don't need a liberal, a rhino, who's going to run with all these alleged social justice warrior nonsense. But we're going to see how it happens. So, you know, next, I want to talk about, and this is something I've been waiting forever to see, because President Trump appealed his conviction in New York. I want to say it was now years ago, and it doesn't seem to me that the appellate court is any too anxious to render an opinion. So Trump has moved to have the case moved to federal court, and in this case, that's probably where it should have been from the beginning. But of course, from the beginning, it was lawfare. Lawfare, which I might point out that all the lawfare against President Trump, and not one of these parties has really been called to task on it. Not a one. And, what's interesting, I think a colorful argument could be made that of the few people, politicians at least, that have been, prosecutions have been announced by the DOJ, they were alleged Republicans. You have Mr. Mustache, and you have Comey, the disaster. And there's so many other illegal acts that have happened. And if the Trump administration, and it looks like they're not going to charge them, they're going to let the statute of limitation toll on all these things. And then they're going to be crying the next time when the Democrats are in power, when they take it to the next level. Because, see, that's what's been happening all along. The Democrats push, and when they get no pushback, they just push a little harder. And everyone complains about what they do. Congress holds hearings. We hear all the evidence. We hear the testimony. We know what crimes were committed, and nobody gets prosecuted. If you're a politician, you apparently can walk scot-free. And here again, I blame the Republican pundits. They talk all the time. And let me give one example that they all brought up back in the day when this happened. And this was fairly early on in Trump's third term here, when there were what I'm going to call the insurrection in California, or the riots in California. I don't care how you want to call it. It was a civil disobedience on a major scale. And we were able to see, because there is alternative media out there, and everybody has a camera in their pocket these days. And most of these cameras are extremely potent, I'll call them. They're capable of immense clarity. So anyone could pull a camera out of their pocket and record what's going on. And I don't know. None of this stuff makes the most amount of sense to me as to what's going on. I'm absolutely baffled. But the DOJ needs to get on the ball. Fauci. I realize that, I don't know if it's later this week or next week, when they're going to be voting on contempt resolution. Do I think the DOJ will do anything with it? No, I don't. Only Republicans get prosecuted and put in prison for those kind of things. But Democrats are, and I don't get it. The only thing that makes sense to me is the Republicans are complicit in a lot of this criminal activity that we see, and I can only guess that the Republicans are saying, hey, if we go down, we're taking you down. And so the Republicans decide, well, we don't want to go down, so we won't take them down. And this is not going to bode well for these Republicans, nor their families. And that's the part that I don't get, because America is on the cusp of becoming a socialist country. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, no, we're not even anywhere close to it. Well, I think you're going to see that the socialists are going to continue to make huge inroads in the inner cities because the inner cities have a larger percentage of their population are poor. And the poor have been decimated by the price increases. You know, I don't know how some of these families are making it out there. And I suspect they're not. I suspect that's why the crime is up and everything. And this doesn't bode well. So to all of these people, capitalism is not a sufficient answer to them. It's not meeting their needs. And this is what happens when you have politicians who are going to spend more money than we have consistently year in, year out, ever increasing the amount of deficit spending that we do. It's not going to play out well. It really isn't going to play out well. But anyway, I want to talk about something else in this video. I took a friend of mine yesterday who had to go to the local courthouse. And like myself, he was wearing Meta glasses. Now, there is a difference between my Meta glasses and his. His Meta glasses are serve as sunglasses, whereas mine are photograde, they're prescription. Anyway, he was told by the deputy at the security that he couldn't wear the Meta glasses in the courthouse. Amazingly, the deputy then told him something to the effect that, look, I know you have a phone as well, and you could record with your phone, but at this time we can't stop you from taking your phone in, but we can stop you from taking the Meta glasses in. And, of course, I was outraged. I was incensed over this because these are public, Public courthouses that at least years ago there was never any problem putting a camera in the back and recording away. You know, I would constantly be in hearings and look and see that there were cameras. Now, most of these were from the mainstream press, but today with anyone potentially being a member of the press, this argument just doesn't bode well. And the thing is you have okay, this is the courthouse, but within this courthouse you have, you know, the tax collector, the clerk of the court. They have offices in here. And so now you can't have Meta glasses. You have to wonder, what are they looking to hide from the public that they don't want something recorded? I'm completely baffled by this. And I think this is the problem you have when you have one-party rule. And here it's the Republicans who rule everything. They control. I don't know that we have any Democrat in office, in at least not in my county. And I don't believe the counties to the north and south to me have any Democrats as well. And that's what happens when you live in a one-party state. So, you know, I placed some calls. You know, I first called the court administrator. And, of course, I left a message, and I asked them to call me. And it's now been over 24 hours, and I haven't gotten a call back. And this is the problem that you have with these people. You know, they have no, they know their positions are secure, that they're not going to get fired. And so they just don't do their job. And that's a problem. And sadly, that's a problem with one-party rule, regardless as to which party it is. You know, these politicians, they get just too big for their britches, and I don't know of any other way to describe that. But I don't know. I don't know. It's a very, very frustrating world we live in these days, and so we'll have to wait and see. Here's another headline. Trump tells embattled Max Miller things aren't looking good after domestic abuse allegations. You know, we have, and this is apparently, not only do the Democrats have this problem, and we have plenty of Republicans out there talking about how there is a lack of checks, prior to somebody getting put on the ballot. And because they're not really looking into a person's background, they get all these surprises. And I think the same thing happens here on the Republican side. And this guy, he doesn't want to give up his cushy job. And my question is, what is it that they're thinking? That it has to be their egos are so swollen that they think that somehow they're going to be exempt and that they're going to be allowed this kind of horrendous conduct. And I get aggravated every time when I see, a lot of times, it's a candidate, and, the party just doesn't check them well, and then we get into the general election and all sorts of stuff starts to come out. Right now, we have a razor-thin grasp on our country. We're losing our country. I believe it's going to be lost. I don't think we can overcome our debt, and our debt's going to bring down our economic system. And I don't know then, once that happens, how it'll all play out. But I can tell you this, it's not going to be good. And I contend that the cause is actually the voters from both parties who they don't vote on the issues, but they vote either on the party or a name that they like, how it sounds, or some other ridiculous thing. And so if you don't understand the issues, you can't possibly understand which candidate is most aligned with your position. And these people are always the loudest to scream when things go wrong, when they put their people in power. I'm tired of listening to Californians complaining about one thing or another wrong with California. They keep putting these people in office, and so perhaps you're part of the minority and you're not complicit in that, but the writing should be on the wall and you need to move. Eventually, California will learn, assuming enough people leave. I know rich people are fleeing left and right, and that's going to continue as long as their wealth is going to be oppressed by these office holders. And some Democrats are starting to wake up to that reality now. But see, I contend that the same problems are prevalent within the Republican Party. And you have this guy, you have to wonder, with all that's come out about him, why he hasn't resigned at this point in time. I don't know the answer, but I guess we'll wait and have to see. But, it's a looming defeat because he's up for election every 2 years. And, you have to wonder, is the public going to hold their nose and vote for this guy, or are they going to vote for the opposition? Or I think the more likely scenario is they're just going to sit home. They're going to say, well, there's really no sense for us going out there to vote. And in that case, the Democrats pick up that seat. I think the Democrats can pick up a lot of seats. I think the problem is, and the war in Iran, it's got to get ended, and it's not ended. What was supposed to be 2 or 3 weeks, And trust me, the Democrats are going to be playing all that footage as we get closer to this election. And I'm sure they'll also play President Trump saying that the only solution to that war was unconditional surrender. And now he just can't find enough issues that he's willing to compromise on. He's willing to do give and take. And it seems to me, we'll just have to wait and see how it plays out. So here's another interesting headline. Teen says Becerra migrant machine led to sexual abuse and slave labor. Look, these Democrats knew what they were doing. These Democrats supported Jeffrey Epstein. They are part of the problem. But they have the mainstream media carrying their water. And the alternative media isn't spending a lot of time concentrating, I'll say, on this issue. I think most of them are going up. You know, they see not just the obvious success of Nick Shirley, but they realize his financial success. And they all say, well, we want to emulate that. And so everyone's out there looking at the fraud right now. And there's plenty of fraud out there. And the sad reality is the fraud is on both sides. You know, I live in a red state, solidly red. And we have problems with the immigration system, especially when it comes to Indians. These Indians pay lawyers, and lawyers get these people to come in. You know, I'm hoping to do some research into some immigration cases, hoping I can illustrate some of this fraud that goes on even in a red state. But, you know, what alerted me to this is I saw where a person was put to work in a store, and in the beginning it was a lot of pointing because they spoke not a word of English. And in 2 years, somehow they got not just a license, they got that gold star on the license which says they're a citizen. I don't know how that happened so fast. I really don't know. How do you come from India and just in 2 years be a citizen? I know that there are Americans who are marrying foreign nationals, and those foreign nationals can't become citizens that quick. So you have to wonder, it's got to be something corrupt within the system. And you know, because you know, Republican pundits, they're like, well, it's our guys that were in office there. We don't want to call them out. Well, to me, that's a big problem. If something is right, it's right. If something is wrong, it's wrong. And it's not like, oh, well, it's wrong if the other guy does it, but if our guy does it, it's right. That's nonsense. But unfortunately, it's happening far too much. You know, let me get back to, you know, in California, you know, I was talking about the riot, and out there the president said, he said, this all needs to be investigated. They need to find who's financing it and charge them. Did that happen? No, not at all. Although Kash Patel did come out. He told us he knew who was financing the same riots that were in Minneapolis, Minnesota. No arrest. He just knows who did it. As if telling us that is somehow meaningful. Well, actually, it would be better off if we didn't know it, because what we do know is you know who's doing it, and you're giving them a pass because they're not being charged. And if it's a case where the FBI is recommending that they be charged and the DOJ is saying no, well, then I think Kash Patel needs to come public with that. But I think it's clear that, you know, Kash Patel established that he was going to lie to us, along with Dan Bongino, over the Epstein files and the debacle of those tapes that they released. And subsequent months and months later, they then released text documents that showed that they were well aware of the problems contained within that video, showing where somebody was doing everything in their power to try to escape being in the camera's view, but their orange jumpsuit, at least what appeared to be the arm of their orange jumpsuit, was clear in the video. And nobody has ever explained that, how that could be. And the reason they're not explaining it is because I suggest that they know not only, I suggest they know who took Epstein out. The question is, did they take him out alive or did they take him out deceased? I don't know. You know, there's a pro and cons of both those arguments, and there is certainly some circumstantial evidence to support each position. Which one is correct? I don't know. I suspect we may never know, or we may at some point find out some evidence on that. And let me say this. You know, the Democrats know far more about what's going on with Epstein than they let on. And I wouldn't be surprised if somehow they let some of this information, which will not look or not make the Republican look very well, and they'll put it out at what they consider an opportune time, kind of like an October surprise. And we'll see how that all plays out. Well, anyway, I've taken up enough of your time today, so I just had to come back on that thing with Trump endorsing Graham's sister for a full term. I find it upsetting because I think she's a rhino. I think, well, Lindsey Graham was a rhino, and she's going to concentrate more on the social issues, so she's going to be more of a problem. Anyway, with that, y'all have a good day. Stay safe. Bye-bye.